So absolutely, I've gotten vicious backlash for the work that I do. But what's ironic is I've got this long track record of exposing corruption in the church. And most of it, before 2020 was focusing on clergy, clerical corruption, cover up in what I guess they call the Novus Ordo church, the wider church. And I started turning, as you know, my sights onto the Society of St. Pius X in 2020. I aired my very first spotlight on that after speaking to a number of different victims. And I didn't go after them any harder than I went after the other bishops and clergy that I, exposed in the rest of the church. But the backlash that I got for that was amazing. I mean, it was the most vicious backlash that I've ever gotten for anything that I've done. And this is not me like saying, oh, poor me. Not at all. It's just more an objective kind of comparison.
No, other people noticed it too. I mean, you were on, was it Jeff Gordon's show talking about that after one of the big
Tim Gordon.
Mm-hmm. Tim Gordon. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I remember watching that and just being like, wow, you guys, like, this is terrible.
Yes. I can't even repeat the names that they called me. I mean, and then I was being sent these videos. And I was just really, I was stunned. I was really stunned. But I thought, wow, if they think that this sort of backlash is going to make me back down somehow, they've got another thing coming, because that's not who I am. That's not how I am at all. So it made me even more determined, because I thought, okay, there's this backlash, meaning there's massive resistance to any sort of admission that this abuse goes on in the SSPX. And I started getting contacted by victims all over the world, not just here, but all over the world. And I started realizing, wow, this is bigger and deeper and broader than I ever knew. And so I started rolling out a series of reports on the SSPX, along with the other reports that I was already doing on the rest of the church. So I don't want people to think that I've just got this hyper focus only on the SSPX. If you look at my investigations, you'll see that most of the work I've done actually has focused on other parts of the church, not the SSPX at all. It actually comprises a minority of what I do. Yeah. But yeah, it was amazing, the backlash, but it has to be done. It has to be done. And the victims, like I said, are so grateful. I can't tell you the number of notes of gratitude I've received from victims who've said, thank you so much, because nobody else will believe us and nobody else will give us a voice. Only you will.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, thank God for you. I'm just so grateful that can be there for them, because you got to do it. And then you mentioned that in other traditionalist groups, there are really similar problems. So you've seen this kind of stuff come out, not just about the SSPX, but other ones even within the church, right?
Yes. And I think the reason that, I want to get into that, other traditionalist communities as well. But I think one of the reasons that there was so much resistance to initially believing that the SSPX could be guilty of not just abuse, but also cover up at the highest levels is because they set themselves forth as very pious, as very orthodox and faithful to the magisterium. They offer the traditional Latin Mass. And so automatically there's this veneer of fidelity. And you just assume that the priest can kind of do no wrong. Because, oh, look, they're offering the Latin Mass and they're so holy. I mean, I hear that all the time. Oh, holy priest. And it's like, why do you think he's holy? Just because he offers the traditional Latin Mass? There's nothing there that automatically makes you holy just because you offer the traditional Latin Mass. But for whatever reason, the laity seem to have this idea that, oh, you offer the TLM and, oh, it makes you just holy and better than the others. Not that Novus Ordo stuff. It's like, no, I'm sorry, that is not the case at all. And the more I look into the abuse cases, because I haven't reported everything that I know, what I've reported is the tip of the iceberg. There are lots of other stories that I have not reported, either because I'm still compiling the evidence or because I can't get like independent corroboration. Not that I don't believe the victims. So the more I look at it, the more I see that, wow, the rate of abuse and cover up is at least on the same level. In the Novus Ordo as well as the trad circles. It's at least on the same level. It's not like the way people want to present it is, oh, well, it's so much worse over here. And sure, we have a few bad apples here, but it's nowhere near as bad as over here. That's just not the case. And something else I need to bring out as well, for those SSPX loyalists who are still thinking that, oh, it's just a few bad apples. It's not just a few bad apples, because the corruption goes way up to the top. Bishop Bernard Fillet, as I exposed in a number of spotlights, was absolutely complicit in transferring and shuffling around predator priests who went on to abuse more victims in case after case after case, or hiding predators away and then reinstating them to ministry somewhere else. I mean, he was no better in the way that he dealt with stuff than Cardinal Law, Cardinal Mahoney in LA, or any of the bad ones that we can think of. He was just as bad. And I'm so tired of these SSPX loyalists simply saying, oh, it's just a few bad apples. And no, it went straight to the top to this day, because Father Pagliurani is also guilty of doing things like that.
Wow. Gosh.
Yeah. But I'm sorry to get back to your question about other communities. Like I mentioned, the FSSP, Father James Jackson, I was floored by the reaction to my reporting on Father James Jackson. People absolutely attacked me. And for those out there who are not familiar with the story, Father James Jackson was actually rector of Our Lady of Guadalupe Seminary, the FSSP seminary in Denton, Nebraska for many years, a highly respected individual. I believe he's published books. He's considered an expert on the liturgy. He appeared in Mass of the Ages, that documentary. And so he's a very highly respected individual. And suddenly he's arrested for allegations of child porn. And there was a raid on his rectory, and they found child porn on his computer as well as on an external hard drive that was right outside his bedroom in the rectory office, which I have since learned does not have open access to the rest of the house. This is an office that you can actually only enter through his bedroom, and his bedroom is normally locked. And so, but then all these theories started flowing around. Oh, he must have been framed by the feds. He was framed. And I wouldn't buy into those theories because I thought you don't have a lick of evidence to show that he was framed. You don't have a lick of evidence to prove that he was hacked. You have nothing to go on. The only reason you're saying that he's framed is because he's a TLM priest who's respected. And so you're looking for any explanation, just to excuse this person. And I was unwilling to do that because I live in reality, quite frankly. And they attacked me for that because I wouldn't buy into their conspiracy theories. And I'm like, give me the evidence, and nobody could give me any evidence.
Oh, wow.
And so they viciously attacked me over that. I thought, wow, you seem to have the same cult-like loyalty in the FSSP as you do in the SSPX to these priests. It's like a clericalism. You think these priests can do no wrong. They offer the TLM. They talk about the liturgy. They're so respected and knowledgeable. Oh, there's no way that they could do this other stuff. And I'm just like, wow, there's so much blindness, so much naivete.
Oh, gosh.
But but I'm sorry to say this too. Evidence in the Institute of Christ the King as well, ICK. Something I have not yet reported on, but all I can only tell people who love the traditional Latin Mass, don't place your faith in any community or in any priest. Okay, there is no safe haven in this world. That's why I keep telling people Christ alone. Focus on Christ alone. By all means, go to the TLM. Receive our Lord there, worship him there, but don't assume that your community is some safe haven that's better and safer than the rest of the church. I hate to say this, there's no real safe haven as long as we're in this world. As St. Therese of Lisieux said, the world's thy ship and not thy home. People need to understand that. We're just passing through here. And our eternal destiny is with Christ. And he's really the only one that you should be clinging to and looking to as the perfect. He's your safe haven. That's the one. So
great. No, that's really a good point. Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And it's really important to talk about this too, because a lot of my viewers are trads or recovering trads who've kind of been hurt by it in different ways and come out of it. And so there's a lot of effort on YouTube being put out about doctrinal issues and things with the SSPX instead of acquaintism and those things, and which is great. But then there's all these other things that like some people kind of tune that stuff out, or they're just like, no, I've decided who I'm going to trust. I don't need to listen to you. But when things like this come out, like the moral issues that they've even, like the SSPX has claimed not to have in the past, but they point the finger at other people. And then it's like, well, actually you do have the same problem. So how are you going to account for that? That really wakes people up. So I feel like I really appreciate that you're willing to talk about it, because it's going to help save people from other issues and errors that they maybe can't recognize because they're just not at that place yet.
Right. I don't discuss the doctrinal issues so much. I kind of leave it to the experts who know a lot better than I do to discuss that. But some people who have done some fantastic discussions of this are Michael Lofton and John Salza. Now, I encourage people, if you really want to learn about the canonical status of the SSPX or some of the doctrinal errors that they make, go watch John Salza. Really, I mean, this is a man who was SSPX for many years. Many years he was SSPX. So he has an insider's view of someone who used to vigorously defend the SSPX, and now he's no longer in it. And his talks are fantastic. I mean, this is a man who knows what he's talking about. And I encourage people to go watch some of his talks, as well as Michael Lofton. He's very good as well. Michael Lofton was also, former SSPX. But yes, as you mentioned, the other side that I try to expose is the sex abuse and the corruption, because people they need to stop being so naive. Quite frankly, I say that in all charity. Stop being naive about your clergy. Stop approaching them like they're demigods. Stop approaching, because that sort of culture is fostered in the more traditional communities, is, like I said, a clericalism where you treat the priest as very special and you generally don't question the priest. If you do question the priest, usually you're shamed and blamed. You just have to treat them with utmost reverence and respect because they're very special, especially in the SSPX, which calls itself eternal Rome, right? Just very exalted and unique position. I've heard of people who were in the SSPX and no longer are, and they said what's really taught in the schools is outside the SSPX, there's no salvation. So for them, it's kind of like the last great hope on earth. And the priests who are chosen to be SSPX priests are very special. You don't question them. Well, that is the perfect breeding ground for abuse. That's the perfect breeding ground for cover up. And that's exactly what happens if you look at various cults and things. It's this, you never question the leader. You simply blindly obey. And that is encouraged in some of these traditional communities. And like I said, is the perfect breeding ground for abuse. And that's how a lot of it happens, why victims aren't believed. Instead, they're shunned, kicked out of the community. I've spoken to many victims who are shunned out of the SSPX because they spoke up. If anything, I've learned not to idealize the traditional community, because there was a sense in which I once kind of idealized it, right? That's how a lot of people approach the TLM. They kind of idealize it. And there's, oh, this is the best and it's so holy and this is where I can come and be safe from everything. And I hate to say it, that's just not necessarily true. Maybe you are part of a really great traditional community. That's wonderful. There's some good ones out there. Right. Don't idealize it though. And don't idolize the traditional Latin Mass. I see that a lot too. And people saying, like, for instance, there was a talk that was given by a priest who offers the TLM. And part of the title of the talk was how the TLM guarantees personal sanctity. And I thought, wow, really? Guarantees?
Well, then we all should have been saints before the council.
Yes.
Whoa. Wow.
I'm like, what about the fact that a large share of sex abuse took place before Vatican II? I mean, if the TLM guaranteed personal sanctity, then we wouldn't have had all these incidents of sex abuse and cover up. And yet a large share of it took place before Vatican II. I mean, people need to stop selling this idea that if we just implement the TLM, all the problems in the church will be fixed and saved. They will not. They weren't fixed and saved back then. It's not going to happen now. What needs to happen is a complete change of heart in each individual going to the TLM. And I don't care if you go to the Novus Ordo or the TLM. I've met very holy people in the Novus Ordo, very holy priests, some of the holiest priests I know, offering the Novus Ordo. So it frustrates me so much when people make this dichotomy and exalt this as, oh, this is the ideal. And if you go to this, you're guaranteed personal holiness. And if you go to this, you're just not. It's like, I'm sorry. In my experience, that is absolutely it's not that black and white at all.